That is right. Welcome in to Season 4, the debut, Episode 1 of the Magic Valley Prepcast here on IdahoSports.com. My name is Brandon Baney, but let's bring on our Magic Valley resident and expert, that guy that was pontificating in that new intro we made for the new season. Let's bring him in. It is our own Scott Burton. Scott, what's going on? Welcome to Season 4.
Wow. Hey, pretty cool intro, man. That's the first that I've heard of it. And it's funny because when you said we're going on, I was going to ask you, hey, are we mixing things up a little bit this year? And then right out of the gate, just when I thought you couldn't be any, you surprised me.
Yeah, I've been doing this to all of our Prepcast hosts. We do, of course, the North Idaho Prepcast, the Treasure Valley Prepcast, the Magic Valley Prepcast, and the East Idaho Prepcast. I put together new intros for all of those for a new season,
Sweet.
Fresh coat of paint, and I wanted to get their raw reaction in real time, Scott. So there it is.
I love it. I love it. It's awesome. Well done, my friend. Summer treat you well?
Yeah, it flew by a little too quickly, but yeah, we're recording this on Monday night, August 12th, Scott. 2-a-days started today across the state. Really, fall practices for everybody started today.
Yeah, today is an absolute circus at just about every school right now. Just 7 fall sports, trying to jostle for time and praying for good weather and no smoke and just trying to get their season started because, you know, a lot of those seasons are starting just a little bit earlier. And so some of these kids cannot afford to miss a single practice or they're ineligible to play. So it is a madhouse. And they're trying to get their physicals and paperwork in. And it's a nightmare for us in the athletic office for about a week.
Yeah, and we will get to, you know, big fall sports storylines momentarily. But for the first episode of the season, we just want this to be a light, breezy, easy episode where we kind of reintroduce ourselves. You know, we have a pretty loyal fan base, a pretty loyal following throughout the Magic Valley that's been there since Season 1. Hard to believe we're on Season 4, Scott. A lot of these athletes, this is our first full class. People we were talking about as freshmen are now getting ready for their senior year, Scott. That's crazy to think about.
Wow. You know, it kind of reminds me of like when you're teaching and you teach so long that you taught their parents, you know, and then you teach, gosh, I'm almost to the point where I am branching out into multiple areas of aunts and uncles and kids and could be grandkids, you know, I mean, not that I would teach the grandkids, I'd be like 112, but kids that I taught are grandparents. I mean, you try wrapping your head around that stuff and you're like, yes, you get off the lawn, you know, whippersnapper. You know, that's what I feel like.
Yeah, it's crazy how far we've come in 4 years. So yeah, we got some dedicated fans that have been there since Season 1. Dedicated fans like Sam Buffington. Sam lives up in North Idaho like I do, but he loves all the shows we do at IdahoSports.com. He is in the chat tonight. He says, Hey Ferris, hey Brandon, and then he says, I love the Indian motorcycle behind you, Ferris. So let's before we introduce ourselves to our audience, let's dive into 2 things here. Something you like to do on the Magic Valley Prepcast. You can, of course, watch this on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, and Twitter account, X account. We do the show live every week, but you can also watch it on replay at any of those 3 places. You can also listen to the Magic Valley Prepcast at IdahoSports.com. Across the top of the homepage, there's a little tab that says Prepcasts. You click on that, you click on the Magic Valley Prepcast, voila, there you are. You can also listen to this podcast by subscribing and downloading wherever you like to listen to podcasts. Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, etc. Although Google is going away. So Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, etc. I got to get used to not saying Google anymore. But for those that are watching the video version of this, we have our names displayed on the screen, just in case you forget who we are. You can see our names are right below our mugs here. But Scott, you always throw in a little nickname or a moniker, and there's always just an interesting tidbit behind it. So for tonight's debut, you've gone with Ferris. I immediately thought of Ferris Bueller, and maybe you wanted one more day off, but what's the sitch here?
Yeah, you nailed it. You absolutely nailed it. School is starting, and I already want to take a day off. And hence Ferris Bueller. Plus one of the best 80s shows of all time, arguably one of the best shows of all time. But yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah, a classic film for sure. Let's also then talk about the setup you've got here. I'm in my office, of course. I've got all my sports memorabilia behind me. Scott, we were trying to find the best spot for you to broadcast from that had good internet too, right? We need good quality internet, and we all remember when I first moved to North Idaho and my internet was not good. I was buffering every 2 seconds, had to get that fixed. So you've done shows from your man cave with all of your, football helmets and sports memorabilia behind you. You've kind of settled into, you'll broadcast from in front of your fireplace at home sometimes.
Yeah.
But now we've got a whole new backdrop here. You got your motorcycle in the background, obviously, all these cool road signs that were probably stolen, and a TV behind you too.
Yeah. So this man cave that we've created here has got many, many layers to it, and it's not even done yet. I mean, you've seen like the football helmets and those kind of things, and all the autographed sports memorabilia, the jerseys, and and tons of stuff that you can't even see on camera. But the one part that we haven't shown yet is the opposite wall, and that is where I park my motorcycle and all the signs that kind of go with it. It's on its own Indian rug, and of course, as you can tell, it's an Indian motorcycle, my favorite kind of motorcycle. And in the summertime or great weather, you don't get me off of it very often. If I have to go to the store, I'll put on a backpack and I'll go to the store and put all my food in the backpack. And if I have too much food, I make 2 trips just so I can ride.
That's dedication.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I love the thing. And man, it's just hard to get me off of it in the summertime.
Yeah. Okay. So you park the Indian motorcycle there. Is this where you're parking your keister for season 4, Scott?
I don't know. I'm still playing with some ideas. I like this. This was brand new. We were going to try this and see kind of how it worked. But I think, we originally, when we did the helmet deal, the internet was a little spotty, but we kind of picked up a little relay out here, and I think we got that under control. So I might be bouncing a little bit. I still have I'm going to get in trouble because Les told me not to move this and told you not to let me move this. She's probably watching live. But you go this way, and we have all the exercise equipment with, the Mamba still on the wall, and so we may use that as a backdrop sometime. So I don't know. We're gonna play around, and we're gonna have some fun.
You could have told me you were broadcasting from the LA Lakers training room, and I would have believed you. That looks pretty legit on that wall over there. That's pretty.
Yeah, I mean, that was hand painted, obviously not by me, but by my director you were talking to earlier. Yeah, she absolutely is incredibly talented at stuff like that. So, all of this is her design, and it's incredible.
For sure. One last comment here. This is from our Treasure Valley Prepcast host, Logan Green. He says, "What an ugly hat. You're wearing a North Carolina Tar Heels hat." Logan, of course, is a big NC State fan.
Yes. Oh, I kind of wondered if we were going to hear from Logan about that, because, this does not sit well with him. But yeah, I grew up a Tar Heel, and oddly enough, I grew up a Tar Heel and a Duke fan, both of them, which is odd, but I liked them both growing up. And, Tobacco Road separates them by 7 miles, and they're bitter rivals. And I liked them both. That's like liking the Rams and the 49ers. That doesn't equate. But I was a kid, and I didn't know any better, and I didn't change.
Yeah, I guess we'll let it pass for sure. So you talked about you might be bouncing around different locations this season, and that's an appropriate way to describe it, because when the school year starts, you bounce around. You're like all over the place. Scott, let's use this to introduce yourself to our audience. We may have new fans that are just discovering the Magic Valley Prepcast for the first time, and they'll go, "Scott Burton, who the heck's this guy, and why is he qualified to talk about Magic Valley sports?" So, Scott, you're Magic Valley born and bred.
Yeah, I've wondered that same thing. Yeah, no, born right here in Jerome, Idaho. Graduated here, and played 4 sports in high school, played football, basketball, baseball, ran track, went on and played college baseball, and ended up going into the media. And before I came to Jerome to teach, I was a news anchor for a Fox station. I had my own sports show. And so, I mean, growing up doing this kind of thing really is what I've done since I've been a kid, just broadcasting and hosting shows and doing all that kind of stuff, and just being a big old fan of the Magic Valley and the sports here and the people that live here. Man, this is perfect for me.
And now you're at your alma mater, Jerome High School, where you have taught and you still teach a class or two, right? You moonlight in the classroom.
I do. I teach. I had to give up all my coaching, which was just absolutely heartbreaking when I took the AD job. But I still held on to coaching the speech team. And so I'm still able to do that as an AD. So that's about the only thing I held on to.
Yeah, and so you're athletic director, you're teaching. You still coach speech, though, right? Or did you? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that's the one thing I held on to is I coached that speech team and gave up my sports, and that's what I'm doing now.
Gotcha. Okay. Scott, on the fly here, I'm gonna change my microphone setting. You tell me if this sounds better.
Can't hear you.
What about this? Does that sound better?
Yeah, that sounds a lot better. I feel like I'm at the eye doctor. Which is better? 1 or 2?
Better 1 or 2?
Yeah. They're about the same, man. I don't know. Am I blind?
Okay. Well, hey, it wouldn't be a season opener without a few glitches along the way.
There you go.
Sure.
You got it. You got the sound.
All right. So Scott has been a teacher. He's an administrator now. He's been a coach. You know everybody in the Magic Valley. Obviously, your colleagues in the Great Basin Conference, Minico, Burley, etc. But you have also really, I think, added to your arsenal in your time as the AD at Jerome, and you've really familiarized yourself with the smaller schools that are in the Magic Valley as well. We talk about it all the time, the Oakleys and the Castlefords and the Raft Rivers and Cary and all of these small 1A and 2A schools through this show, right? And just reaching out and talking to coaches and ADs, but also Jerome has hosted a lot of district tournament action for these smaller conferences over the past couple of years also.
Yeah, absolutely. Just sometimes you get lost in your own world surrounded by the same people. And that's one of the cool things that I love about what we're doing here is it gets me out of the Great Basin. I love all the ADs that I work with, but I also love getting to know everybody else, whether they're in the Great Basin or they're 5A, 4A, it doesn't matter. And there are so many cool people and so many incredible stories out there that we were fortunate enough to tell, over the course of those 3 years heading into year number 4. And that is the part that I love the best, is telling the stories that people don't know about these teams, about these athletes, about these coaches. And it just makes for a really good listen.
Yeah. And that's why I think we make such a good team because just quickly, my bio. Hi, I'm Brandon. I live in North Idaho.
Hi, Brandon.
Yeah, right. I live in North Idaho now. Before that, I lived in East Idaho. So really, I haven't been into the Magic Valley much at all, except to broadcast games. But I'm from Montana originally. I've lived in Wyoming and Nebraska, and I got into media as a 19-year-old. I went to college for 1 year, and I was like, why do I have to take math and Spanish and all this other stuff that doesn't really apply to what I want to do? So I decided to just knock on the door of the local radio station. I said, hey, I'll work for free if you guys just teach me. And they said, we like that. We like free labor. So
we like your business model. Come on in.
And that honestly, people ask me, well, how do I get into this business? And that's what I always recommend is just, hey, be willing to basically work for free and observe and learn by doing. And if you can get your foot in the door somewhere, then you start to know people and you get contacts and you can work your way up. And that's what I've done. I worked in radio primarily before I got hired at IdahoSports.com. And now Here I am, the managing editor. And so it works pretty well because I've got like the big statewide view. Like if there's a score or something happening, usually it's on my radar, but it's like a surface level. Like, oh, this game happened and this looked interesting. And then I reach out to you, Scott, and you live in the Magic Valley, so you're a lot closer to these people. You can then get a little deeper in. So,
yeah, and there's so many more stories to uncover. And if you're listening now and first time listener, even if you've been with us for 3 years, that is the thing that I think we pride ourselves the most on. And it's kind of the mantra. And you put it actually in the new intro, and it was beyond the box score. What are the stories behind the scores, behind the teams? Anybody can pick up a newspaper or get online to a newspaper or get on Idaho Sports scores, or anybody can read a box score and find out who won and by how much. But what don't you know about the game? What don't you know about the team? What don't you know about their season that makes this unique? And we're always interested in those stories. So if you know them, as we start season 4, reach out to us, because that is the part that we love more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, we could tell you that, oh yeah, Valley beat Glens Ferry in football, but without the context of they're playing for the Stanley Trophy, which was named in honor of the Stanleys, who lived in both communities and tragically passed away in a car accident. And now there's this traveling trophy. Like, unless you're a fan of those two schools, like, you probably don't know that that's a component to the game. And that's what we're trying to do, is expose these stories to a bigger audience.
Yeah. When you go back over the things that we covered, athletes battling cancer. We talked about, tragic deaths. We talked about teams that succeeded with three athletes. We talked about the obstacles that a lot of our athletes are overcoming, whether they're mental, whether they're physical. And you don't know those things unless you tune in and you listen to us every week, because those are the things we're trying to bring you.
Yeah, just 2 small anecdotes that always stick out to the top of my head. We were talking about teams, but then we were talking about, the little quirks or the little things they add to their routine. We talked about Gooding softball a couple of years ago, and how basically to lighten the mood, they would all the players would talk with British accents when they were out on the field playing and warming up and practicing, just to kind of break the tension a little bit. And they had an awesome season that year. And I don't know, on the surface, it's just like, okay, whatever. That's a cool thing, I guess. But I don't know. It kind of gives you a bigger idea of, okay, these girls can handle the pressure because they've instituted this. It's pretty cool.
Right. Well, and the other thing that it does too is we get so used to, following sports, whether it's high school, college, pro, whatever. But, in this instance, high school, and we just learn names and numbers and schools. Okay, that's Johnson. He wears number 18 and he averages, about 18 points a game or whatever. And that's all we know. But if Johnson were to walk into the store, you wouldn't recognize him. If Johnson were to tell you his story, you wouldn't know anything about it. So that's kind of the cool thing, is they're not just last names and numbers that belong to a school. What we're trying to do is give these kids personalities, these coaches personalities, to where they're more than just something that appears in a box score. They're people, and the people stories are better than any sports game that you're going to find.
So along that thread line, if there is an athlete, if there is a coach, if there is a community member, if there's something unique or something interesting happening at your school that ties into athletics or extracurricular activities. I mean, Scott, we talked about last year, the Jerome High School cheerleaders went down to Dallas and competed at the Dallas Cowboys Stadium in a national competition, which is incredible. If there is something happening at your school, reach out. Our email addresses are on the screen: Brandon at IdahoSports.com, Scott at IdahoSports.com, because that's what we want to do. We want to shine the spotlight on these young men and women and these coaches in our communities that are doing great things.
Yeah. And last thing I'll say about it too is, I mentioned how we are just, as people, we just get comfortable within our own circles, whether it's just, oh, I'm just a 2A school and all I know are just my 2A neighbors, same can be said for 4A, whatever, doesn't matter. But a lot of us just don't ever branch out. And a lot of the people that are, let's say, in 3A, they can't tell you the 4A schools that are in the Magic Valley and vice versa. And so hopefully we're crossing these lines to where it really truly is a Magic Valley representation, and all the schools, all the fans can tell you something about a school outside of their bubble. And if we can do that, then we've actually encompassed what we've set out to do.
So that is the mantra here at the Magic Valley Prepcast. Scott, next week we'll start tackling some of the big storylines ahead of the first week of football competition. As a friendly reminder, we've got football previews, one for every team in the entire state of Idaho, parked right on the homepage at IdahoSports.com. We've got right now probably 60% of the schools in. By next Monday, the goal is to have all of them in. So if your favorite school isn't in there yet, keep checking back. We're getting more and more back every day. And it just, there's like 160 schools playing football, Scott. It takes a long time to write a preview for every single one. And so that's on the homepage at IdahoSports.com. We've got all of our prepcasts, including a few new prepcasts we've added to the lineup this year. Of course, we have our regional prepcasts, North Idaho, Treasure Valley, Magic Valley, and East Idaho. The Idaho 8-Man Prepcast will be coming back next week, where we just talk about 8-man football with Will Henneke and the coach, Lane Kirkland, former Cary head coach, who's just, one of the greatest of all time. Just the fact that I convinced him to come back for a second season was like the win of the offseason, I thought, Scott.
That's a good get. And there's so many 8-man football teams that they deserve their own little spotlight. And I'm glad that that's coming back.
Yep. And then in addition to all of that, we have two kind of non-high school shows we've added to the arsenal this fall. The Fighting Taters show, which is hosted by Lucas Gebhardt and Ryan Luke. They're over in the Treasure Valley for us at IdahoSports.com. And they're talking the colleges. Hey, what's going on with the Idaho Vandals? What's going on at Boise State? What's going on with Idaho State or the College of Idaho or CSI? Because there's a lot of these high school athletes that do move on to the college level and are still achieving great things, but it's an area that's kind of untapped, at least at IdahoSports.com. They're kind of out of sight, out of mind once they walk out of their high schools. Well, we want to continue talking about them and talking about, what's going on in the college athletics scene. So if you're into more of the college athletics, the Fighting Taters show is going to be the show for you. You can find that at all the usual places. Our YouTube channel, Facebook page, Twitter account, and also wherever you download and subscribe to podcasts. And then our own Lance Taylor, he's got the gift of gab, Scott, just like you and me. He's got a show now called Yappin' Sports, which is appropriate for Lance. And he is talking, right? Very appropriate, right? And he is talking national headlines and how they might trickle down and affect Idaho. So things like the transfer portal, things like NIL, name, image, and likeness. He had on one of District 5's football officials last week to talk about what are the points of emphasis this year for high school football in the state of Idaho. His very first episode, Scott, he had on the new executive director of the IHSAA, Chad Williams. How about that for right out of the gate? That's a pretty big guest.
Wow, no kidding. Nice job, Lance. Now what are you going to do for a follow-up?
Yeah,
but that's going to be fun. I think all of these ideas just show a couple of things. Number one, it shows how many talented people we have working with us at IdahoSports.com. And it also shows, how deep our reach is and how many things that we can cover, and I think that's a pretty cool thing that we're branching out. I'm excited for both of those.
It is an expanded menu here at the Cheesecake Factory. IdahoSports.com this season. We've got a few more things to sample.
Oh, I haven't eaten yet. And so any mention of that, and I'm just salivating. I'm like Pavlov's dog here.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, Scott, we don't want you to sing for your supper any longer. We'll let you get out of here.
Nobody wants that.
Yeah. So you can go enjoy your evening. Hey, thanks for tuning into the Magic Valley Prepcast, everybody. We will be here Pretty much every week between now and the end of the school year in May. You know, you might miss a week or two here or there, or take some scheduled breaks off, but we're going to be here, rain or shine, almost every week throughout the school year. Scott, breaking down the biggest stories from the Magic Valley. Buckle up. You ready?
I am ready, and I'm excited to dive into these stories. I'm excited to bring back Scott's thoughts. I'm excited to just jump right back in. And it just seems like we finished this like a couple of weeks ago. I don't know where the summer goes, but it just seems like we just finished this. And now here we go again.
Yeah, off to the races for the 2024-25 school year. So thanks for tuning into the Magic Valley Prepcast. We'll be back next week, talk a couple of football storylines. But until then, for Scott Burton, I'm Brandon Baney. Thanks for tuning into the Magic Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.